Bartholomew Town is brought to you in part by the University of Rhode Island Online, Navigant Credit Union, the Audubon Society of Rhode Island, Newport Film, and Half Street Group.
Bartholomew Town.
All right, it's been a flurry of executive orders and really just in general, just a wild time to say the least here as the Trump administration does exactly what the Trump doctrine will probably go down as being, which is all hands on deck to try to undo as much of what we know as our country as possible, to reshape it in a way that we really don't even fully understand yet. One of the leading voices on a legal side that has been challenging these executive orders is Rhode Island Attorney General Peter Neronha. You've had success in court, and we'll see where this goes from here. The General joins us this morning, and thanks for your time.
Good morning, Bill.
Your initial takeaway, we could go through the rundown of executive orders, of which there are well over 60 at this point, but your initial takeaway of reaction and action from attorneys general, yourself included, in challenging these executive actions.
Yeah. Look, I think we are, when I say we, I mean the attorneys general are uniquely positioned to push back against the Trump administration when they violate the law and impact our citizens in a harmful way. Because we are lawyers and we are the people's lawyers, and we know how to use the tools of the law to hold the administration to abide by the law and the Constitution. And you know, I know you have a lot of questions, so I won't give a long answer, but I'll just say one thing, that the Constitution provides for three branches of government, and through his executive orders, the president has largely sidelined the Congress. I mean, they really are powerless when he takes the power to control spending away from them, which he effectively has done. It's unconstitutional, and we're fighting back about it. But Congress needs to figure out a way to get their power back.
Yes, and there's been so much made of the judicial branch's role in all of this, and we've heard about constitutional crises, and frankly, some people have been framing this as a reshaping of what the U.S.'s overall levers of power will be, but not enough about Congress. And you wonder, when will Republicans in Congress who are in the majority in both chambers actually step up and say, wait a second, I took an oath of office not to Elon Musk, not to Doge, not to a miscellaneous litany of culture war or expenditure-related executive orders, or the use of language to kind of manufacture consent like this nonsense with the Gulf of Mexico. Now all of a sudden it's the Gulf of America. When will people actually realize that this is the real deal, and it's going to be incumbent upon Congress to act now? I hate to say it, but potentially maybe not save America, but get us back on track in a way that is more recognizable to what we've been, at least from an administrative standpoint.
Well, it's going to take Congress, men and women, senators and representatives from red states, frankly. Their citizens are being hurt and are going to be hurt by the Trump administration's policies. I'll give you an example. I was on a call last night with my former U.S. attorney colleagues from around the country. And my former colleague from Kansas, Barry Grissom, was saying there are soy farmers in Kansas that, because of the president's effective elimination of USA aid, USAID, that those soy farmers have much fewer places to sell their soy. And so they're being hurt, very, very deeply in their pocketbooks. You know, it's going to take things like that from red states to convince their congressmen and women to step up and say something. Look, there are federal workers all over the country. When they lose their jobs the way the president has effectively eliminated them, it's not just through the resignations. It's by getting rid of everybody on a probationary status. That's in the federal government. That's most people are on a probationary status for a year. For lawyers at the U.S. Attorney's Office, it's 2 years. They're all people in the economy in every state in the country. It's not like the federal government is all in Washington. A lot of it's there, but more of it's outside of Washington, D.C. And so that's going to impact people in red states. You know, we got an injunction in Massachusetts, the attorneys general, to prevent the administration from holding back money by effectively changing the reimbursement rates for NIH funding for overhead expenses. But that only applies, and this was a strategic decision by us, to the states on the lawsuit. So what that means is, for right now, in the blue states, that NIH, National Institutes of Health research funding, which funds our hospitals, which delivers our health care, among many other things, is protected. But in all those red states, it's not. And so when Alabama, which has a huge, for example, Birmingham, huge healthcare industry, when they start to feel it and the blue states don't, well, I'd like to think the senators in Alabama are going to stand up and do something. If they don't, they're going to hear it from their residents. And I think perhaps at that point, this government by chaos and cutting the federal government by hammer instead of by scalpel is going to come home to roost.
Very interesting. Almost like a pressure campaign of sorts that makes an organic reaction take place. And I wonder your take as well. I was in New York a couple of times this weekend and talking with people about, I mean, Eric Adams, the situation there, he's found a way to annoy just about everybody along the political spectrum, left to right, for a long time. But right now, we don't know exactly what happened with, if there was a deal brokered between border czar or whatever he is, immigration strongman Tom Homan and Eric Adams. We don't know exactly what happened, but what it appears to be is the wielding of being careful with my words here, because again, we don't know exactly what happened, but it seems like there was a deal brokered that charges would be dropped against for the first time, a sitting New York mayor. Corruption charges would be dropped in exchange for access to Rikers Island by ICE officials. These are the types of extrajudicial practices that we typically don't see in this country, never mind celebrate, and yet there are people in this country who think this is a wonderful situation. Obviously, there are people who don't, as deputy mayors resign, as district attorneys and assistant district attorneys resign. But your take on these types of things that just seem so bizarre and extreme actually unfolding before our eyes?
Well, look, it runs counter to everything that the Trump administration says it stands for. We hear over and over and over again about the rule of law, but here the rule of law was cast aside. I'll say it. There's no question, because I believe the assistant United States attorneys and the acting U.S. attorney who confronted the administration about cutting a deal for dropping of charges in exchange for cooperation on immigration. It's a quid pro quo, and it violates every principle of the Department of Justice and the justice system as we know it. And so, look, the people that confronted the administration were not woke, Democratic assistant U.S. attorneys or acting U.S. attorneys. This was the acting U.S. attorney who clerked for Justice Scalia, who's a member of the Federalist Society, who confronted the administration on this and ultimately resigned. And one of the other assistant U.S. attorneys won a Bronze Star in Iraq. So these are people that normally Republicans would celebrate, but they resigned. And so there's no question that that's what happened here. And it runs so contrary to everything the Department of Justice stands for. It leaves me, as a veteran of that department, speechless. Look, here in Rhode Island, it's not like we don't need the FBI to work terrorism cases. That, after 9/11, that's where their attention was principally focused. Okay, DEA can do drugs, Homeland Security can do immigration. We need the FBI to do domestic and international terrorism cases. That's what they're trained to do, and that's what they're good at. And yet, even here in Providence, 25% of the field office has to work immigration cases under the new administration. Think about that for a minute. We have prioritized immigration over national security. That is a tremendous, tremendous mistake. And when the president goes after nearly 20% of the FBI workforce and threatens to get rid of them, again, we are hurting our national security. We have the resources to do immigration the way it should be done. We are here. We're here prosecuting violent criminals, whether they're here in the country lawfully or not. What immigration should be doing is immigration cases, going after violent criminals and leaving the FBI to do their jobs. And so I think we're putting our national security at risk. I'm confident we are with this administration's policies. And look, just the notion of laying off FAA workers when we've had 4, 5, 6, 7 airline incidents in just the last month is another head-scratching moment for me.
It's shocking. And as for national security, they've done a good job of trying to manufacture consent around the notion that, well, if you want to have national security, you got to deport as many people as possible and take them to Guantanamo Bay. But simultaneously, they've been able to inject a level of poison into communities. Take a look at Newport, where, yes, it was a targeted raid by ICE a couple of weeks ago. One individual was targeted. But at the same time, you've got masked ICE agents, or federal agents, I believe ICE. We actually haven't clarified what agencies were involved in this, on the ground in downtown Newport in the middle of the day. What that does is it sends a ripple effect. I've spoken with parents of Newport public school students, of immigrants and natural-born U.S. citizens, all together have this same concern of, geez, are they going to come into the schools? Is my kid's friend who he plays basketball with going to be deported because he's a dreamer? These things start to percolate in a community, and they create a sense of fear and keep people on edge. And it seems like that, along with many of these other executive orders, is a huge angle that the Trump administration is aiming for. Let's just inject fear and make it so people either get in line, shut up, or you got to look over your shoulder.
Yeah, look, I agree. And I think we issued guidance with the Department of Education to try to tamp down on some of those fears, to let parents and students know when an ICE agent could lawfully come into a school and when they couldn't, because the Trump administration said that schools and churches were no longer going to be off limits. Well, of course, that injects fear into the communities, in Rhode Island. And I spoke to a host on WPRO, and she said that we were causing the fear because of the memo we put out. There's just such a disconnect between reality on the ground on some of these talking heads that, look, I wish they could come and visit some of the places that I visit. And some of these paper tigers or stalking horses or straw people that they want to create as the enemy of our country aren't quite as frightening as they would make them out to be.
Right. It's interesting to hear the role that the media plays here and hear you say that, because I would agree as well that certainly there's objective media, but then you get pushback from an organization that's as objective as the Associated Press on this nonsense with the Gulf of Mexico, which apparently Leavitt, the press secretary, said it is a fact. This is her quote. It is a fact that that body of water is the Gulf of America. I'm thinking back to summer in 10th grade, sitting in my parents' backyard reading 1984 and the memory hole and the use of language. And again, you don't want to get too nuts in terms of all of a sudden you're like the opposite version of Alex Jones. But that seems like what's happening here. And the manipulation of media personalities is incredibly effective right now.
Bartholomew Town.
Birds are disappearing from our landscape at a rapid pace. Over 1/3 of those breeding on Audubon Society of Rhode Island's wildlife refuges are in decline. Climate change has taken a toll on their migration, nesting, and food sources. While science is highlighting the problem, Audubon is working on real solutions with a plan to rapidly reduce their carbon emissions. The organization will be free of fossil fuels by 2030, with renewable energy powering Audubon's buildings, equipment, and vehicles. To shape our future, all of us must act. Learn more about Repowering Audubon, their avian research, and how you can join their fight for climate resiliency. Visit asri.org/repower. Newport Film screens the latest, critically acclaimed documentary films year-round across Rhode Island. Like a film festival, Newport Film often gets early access to films before they're available online or in the theaters. Stay up to date on their latest screening events at newportfilm.com or on Instagram @NewportFilm. Are you looking to advance in your career or explore a new field? The University of Rhode Island now offers a comprehensive portfolio of fully online programs designed to bring world-class education to you anytime, anytime, anywhere. Choose from a wide range of flexible, asynchronous programs in business and leadership, data, tech and STEM, healthcare and pharmacy, marine and environmental science, and more. With expert faculty and innovative courses, you'll gain the skills and knowledge to thrive in today's competitive world. Are you ready to take the next step? Visit uri.edu/online and discover how URI Online can help you achieve your goals. URI Online, learn anywhere with us. Half Street Group brings a new generation's perspective to leadership communication, strategic public relations, and digital marketing. Half Street helps organizations and leaders take control of their own stories and manage their reputations. They get results for their clients by focusing on audience message and culture, and by leveraging their decade-long relationship with media and opinion leaders in the Ocean State and throughout New England. Join me and Half Street Group founder and president Mike Rea for a conversation every month about news of the day, the hottest media analysis, and a look behind the scenes at how impactful leaders drive conversations. Learn more at halfstreetgroup.com. As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. Today, Navigant is a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org.
Yeah, look, I think that's right. And look, I'm open to positions that disagree with mine. And certainly as a trial lawyer, that was my life. You know, I was on one side of a case and somebody was on the other side. And I never took it personally. And my relations with other members of the bar was always really great. The problem here, I think, is that there are some with whom you really can't have a rational discussion any longer. It's sort of facts don't matter. I think that will be Donald Trump's eventual legacy, is that it was the first leader in our nation's history that so deliberately and consistently departed from truth. And his spokeswoman, embraced that almost on day one. I really give the national media a lot of credit, some of them, for confronting her when she says things that aren't accurate. So I'll give you an example. No one thinks that we should remove violent criminals more than me. I've spent my life in that work. Here in the office, we charge 5,000 felony cases a year. Many of them are violent criminals who commit acts against not only their fellow Rhode Islanders, but against children. The United States Attorney's Office, by contrast, even doing immigration cases, charges no more than 100 to 125 cases a year. So all of that work has principally been done here. So I don't want anyone to take from my statements that I don't believe in immigration enforcement. I do, and we've been doing it here, and I did it at the U.S. Attorney's Office for a long time. We are prosecuting violent criminals regardless of whether they're here in the country or not. And when ICE wants to pick them up, they can pick them up. No one prevents them from doing that, and they have notice of it. So that's not what I'm talking about. But when the administration says they are deporting violent criminals, and 50% of them have never committed a crime at all, and is confronted by that fact by a member of the national media, and the spokesperson says, well, they came into the country without documentation, therefore they are by definition criminals. Well, I have two responses. Number one, they're not violent criminals. And number two, as a former U.S. attorney and assistant U.S. attorney, we never once prosecuted anybody from coming into the country unlawfully. That is an immigration matter. It's not a criminal matter. But that departure from truth is what concerns me the most about this administration. And, Trump started it in his first administration. His acolytes embrace it. And it is a remarkable moment in American history when our leaders don't care about truth. That puts us plainly on the path to authoritarianism. And that really worries me. The Congress is already being sidelined. It's time for the judiciary to step up and remember the words of the great John Marshall in Marbury versus Madison, which is the Supreme Court is the ultimate decider of what the law is, and no one else, not the president, not Elon Musk, no one else. And so hopefully our court system remembers that, because one branch of government has effectively been sidelined by this president and seems powerless, at least so far, to push back about it.
Right. And even the optics the other day of that bizarre press conference where you've got Donald Trump and Elon Musk with his Elon Musk son in the Oval Office, Trump seated at the Resolute desk looking up at Musk, dressed in sort of a combination of a professional wrestler slash, I don't know, some indie musician kind of jacket that he was wearing, the black MAGA hat, just a bizarre scene. And you start to wonder, we hear about oligarchy, we hear about narrowing of the wealth gap, and all of these things are clearly true. Now you start to wonder, is the executive branch, has that been commandeered? And is that all of a sudden going to be less relevant than the business class? And when we say business class, we're not talking about Fortune 500 companies. We're talking about individuals who are hyper venture capitalists, to their credit from a capitalistic competition standpoint. But nonetheless, from a human standpoint, dangerous people that seem to want to take the world in a totally different direction, or expedite the decline of opportunity for so many people to actually make a decent living and live a decent life. You wonder, how far away are we, and what can attorneys general and the judiciary as a whole do to stop what's happening with Elon Musk and his acolytes and this bizarre, unprecedented moment of the private sector, through the guise of an invented, or not agency, but quasi-agency with Doge. What can be done about this to put a halt to it? Obviously lawsuits, but how can we just make it go away?
Yeah, so I think the starting point for me is, like, what is Doge? I mean, most of our federal departments are, not most of them, all of them are created by an act of Congress, whether it be the Department of Justice way back, or the Environmental Protection Agency, or the Department of Energy. They're all created by an act of Congress. The president has the right to appoint that person, subject to confirmation by the United States Senate, which then gives the Senate and the Congress as a whole oversight authority over that agency. Doge is just an invention of Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And so, again, the Congress has been sidelined. Elon Musk has been appointed to no agency head. In fact, now that AGs have sued, all of a sudden he's not even head of Doge. Now, according to the administration, he's a senior advisor to the president. So God knows who's in charge of Doge. I mean, it's a little bit like Charlie Brown and Lucy. They keep moving the ball here to there. The good news is AGs are able to track the ball and still kick it. So we've got two cases, one in New York and one in Washington, in which we've taken on Elon Musk in this violation of what is known as the Appointments Clause. And the Appointments Clause means that the president has to appoint somebody to an office, and then the Senate has to confirm that appointment. And that allows the Senate to oversee and, frankly, to check the qualifications and the ability of the person to hold the job and understand what it is they're going to be doing. No one really understands what Elon Musk is doing except getting access to very sensitive information. You know, we talk and hear a lot about waste, fraud, and abuse. I haven't heard of any actual waste, fraud, and abuse actually remedied by Doge, other than just, unless you think that's laying off a lot of federal workers and then having to call them back, like the ones who do nuclear weapons or FAA officials. You lay them off, you got to bring them back because you're not even sure who you're firing. I mean, they fired U.S. attorneys and sent the firing notices to the wrong email address, so they stuck around an extra 5 days. I mean, this administration, frankly, can't get out of its own way. So any notion that they're effectively finding and dealing with waste, fraud, and abuse is mere fantasy. And so, yeah, it's really concerning to me, because Musk seems accountable to no one other than the president, who doesn't think he's accountable to anybody. And the Congress is effectively sidelined. And so that's why AGs are stepping up. And, look, there are two things we need to do. We need action and words. I think some people don't have the ability to take action. They could certainly be leaders by standing up and speaking out. What's really surprised me in Rhode Island is sort of the absence of leadership voices from some of my fellow state officials. I don't mean to call them out, and I suppose in the way I am, but either they don't have access to the audience, if you will, the public, so that they can make their voices heard, or they're watching in silence. But this is a moment to speak out and take action. I'm fortunate that as an attorney general, I can stand up on behalf of Rhode Islanders and Americans with my fellow attorneys general. But at a minimum, we need to speak out. I mean, I feel like we're spending more time worrying about the quality of the oversight on the Washington Bridge, which, by the way, just build the damn thing. I mean, let's just build it. It's already taken far too long, but let's just build it. Than what I think is a crisis in our nation's history. And I think that when we look back on this, or I won't be around to look back on it, but when my kids or grandchildren look back on it, this is going to be a pivotal moment in our history. And it is really my hope that good Americans, which I believe is the vast majority of us, will see what's happening and say something about it, including my fellow leaders. I just don't think it's enough to hope for the best. And then, start to have concerns when things are already off the rails. This is not, you could see this was coming on day one. And it's why AGs have acted so quickly. I'd love to see that same level of enthusiasm for speaking out in government beyond our congressional delegation, frankly, and from Americans. Look, when I went on a trip recently to visit a family member, but when I'm out and about in a restaurant or in an airport, I look around and I see my fellow Americans, and I don't see them as sort of blue and red or, we agree or disagree. I just see them as fellow Americans going about their lives. And that gives me hope in some of these darker moments when I'm trying to figure out how to push back against the latest madness coming out of Washington. And I think that will prevail in the end. But it won't prevail if we don't recognize the moment we're in. And I think we as state leaders need to step up and make it very clear that this is a pivotal moment in our history. Yeah. And it's not good enough to just hold on and hope for the best.
It's a moment for dissident opinions. It's a moment for action. And it's a moment to really, from a legacy standpoint, to be on the right side of history. And that's exactly what I think you're doing right now. And I think that that's what anybody who's speaking out and using their position of influence, not to mention, I just had Jeff Hall, the executive director of the Audubon Society, in here. They're facing a crisis from a funding situation that could dramatically impact the environmental work that they're doing and obviously the conservation work. That's just one small example. But when you take a look at the infrastructure project of note, the Washington Bridge, first of all, couldn't agree more. Sick of the story. Don't want to hear bridge talk anymore. Let's just move on, figure out how to build it, and get on with our lives. And again, we had this performative oversight committee hearing, joint oversight committee hearing last week. But the moment right now, it's a moment for advocacy, for continuing that which made our nation great, which is, and we've fallen behind on infrastructure, there's no doubt, but we need to maintain the infrastructure that we do have so that if we have any ideas for multimodal transportation or improved efficiency or carbon neutrality, if we can't build a bridge that's a basic piece of infrastructure because funding isn't available for whatever reason, retribution, whatever it is, we're doomed.
Yeah, Bill. And I think, one of the things I've heard lately is, don't worry about it. We're going to have the money, or the feds will come through with the money. It was never threatened. Everything was threatened. That's what that OMB memo was about. And the administration didn't move until we sued and Judge McConnell granted our motion for a temporary restraining order. On the night before we filed that lawsuit here in Rhode Island, my fellow attorneys general and I, the Rhode Island tried to pull down Medicaid funds from the federal government. And they were told you can't get them. Okay. And they were told by the federal government that you can't get the funds. We don't know when you're going to get them. And we're not going to put anything in writing. So a couple days later, Medicaid is unfrozen and everyone thinks, well, that's fine. Well, it's only fine because somebody held them to account. Okay. That was their intention. So when people tell you, oh, the bridge money was always going to be there, don't believe them. When they tell you the Medicaid money was always going to be there, don't believe them. This administration is doing surgery with a hammer, and everything is at risk. And if we don't push back this administration is going to affect our day-to-day lives in ways that we can't even imagine yet. It's going to impact our healthcare systems. Ask healthcare leaders, Bill. They're really worried about what happens if federal funding for healthcare goes away, if Medicaid funding goes away. They're going to have to treat those people anyway. You can't turn people away if they're sick. Okay, you're going to have to pay for them anyway. Where is that money going to come from? We celebrate the elimination of the car tax. Guess what, folks? If the federal money goes away, you're going to have a lot higher state and local taxes, because otherwise we're just not going to be able to do the kinds of things that we need to do. I mean, there's either going to be a healthcare system or there isn't. If we don't fight back on these fiscal issues and cultural issues and principle issues, on all the things that we stand for and have stood for as a country, we're going to look very different 2, 3, 4 years from now. And in my view, it's not going to be a good look at all.
Rhode Island Attorney General Peter Neronha, thanks for what you're doing out there, and thanks for your time today.
Thank you too, Bill. Thanks for your work as well.
Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for stopping by Bartholomew Town. For more content, follow me on Instagram @BillBartholomew.